Exactly. Our special guest today is Dr. Michael Borich and his postdoc. Um, what's her name? Ah! I'm embarrassing myself, but I'm going to stick to Dr.
Yasmine.
Borich. I'm going to let him introduce
Yeah.
the Dr. Yasmine Bassil. Did I say it correctly? Okay. They're going to talk to us today about movement. John kind of for those who are uninitiated and new, we always start off our BrainTalk Live with an exercise session. And that's really like moving. It's just like, well, maybe you don't like the music, maybe you don't like John today, but the idea is that you get to move around a little bit. And maybe he'll play a little tune that you want to move from side to side to. You don't have to have any rhythm, you just got to move. And exercise is something that's really, really important. And as we age, being more active, more physically active, allows us to maintain our function over time. And Dr. Borich and Dr. Bassil are going to tell us a little bit more about that. Dr. Borich, we're very happy to have you. Thank you. He is from the Department of Physical Medicine and Rehab here at Emory University. Dr. Borich.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Parker, and thank you for the invitation. And yes, that's absolutely, John, is a tough act to follow, so we're going to try our best here. We have prepared a few slides today, but really one of the things we'd like to do is save a lot of time for your questions and to have some conversation and discussion. So what we're going to do is I'm going to just give a little background about the lab that I direct here at Emory University. I've been here since 2014, so the lab has been around for a little while now.
And can you speak up just a little bit?
Speak up a little bit, sure.
A little bit. I'm turned up everything, and you have a soft voice, so
well, that is the first time I've been told that. So that is I'll take that as a compliment in this case. So is that any better? Hopefully that is improved for everyone. So like I was mentioning is that we have a lab here at Emory. It's been established for about 12 years. I'm going to share my screen just with some kind of basic slides to carry us along on this presentation. So as mentioned, I'm Dr. Michael Borich, and then with me is Yasmine Bassil, who's a PhD candidate in the neuroscience training program here at Emory. And Yasmine will take you through a specific study that we wanted to share with you all that we thought may be relevant. It's new results from our lab and something that we're pretty excited about. And we are currently in the process of following up on with another study that for those who may be in the area and interested in participating will give you more information about that. So as I mentioned, so the lab is really interested in understanding this phenomenon of neuroplasticity, or a simpler way to think about it is how the nervous system responds to experience and adapts and changes over time. And why do we care about that? Because we're really interested in understanding how we can take this capacity for neuroplasticity and leverage it into better treatments for people who have experienced some type of neurologic disorder or condition. But as well, and I think particularly relevant to this particular talk, is how we can improve quality of life and function for individuals as they move through the aging process. So who makes the NPR run? Not really me. It's all the trainees and collaborators, as well as the funding agencies, and most importantly, the participants in our research studies. Without those folks, none of this would be possible. So I want to make sure that one of my earliest slides is to let you all know who are the real people making the knowledge and advancing our knowledge from the lab. So again, the guarding question in the lab, just big pictures, we're really trying to understand how we can measure and modulate. How can we positively exploit this plasticity potential in people to both maintain and enhance function, but also in the context of disease and disorders, how can we restore that function? So when we think about neuroplasticity, we're thinking about this as the primary building block of learning, and that goes through the process of memory formation. So one good example of this, if you remember anything from this talk, or even if you just think back a couple minutes to John's exercise routine, if you remember any of that, that means your brain is different than it was before you joined this call. That means you've experienced neuroplasticity because a memory for that has formed. And we're mostly interested in the memories that are established for learning of motor skills. But Yasmine's going to talk to us more about other cognitive domains where we also know that neuroplasticity occurs and can enhance function. And what we really think is exciting is that the number one driver of neuroplasticity is experience. So just by the nature of this experience of joining this call, as I mentioned, you are engaging in a bout of neuroplasticity, right? And so you have the ability, the autonomy to be able to choose those experiences. And so I'm glad that you've chosen this one as one of those experiences. And a key point I'd like you to take away from today is that this capacity for neuroplasticity, this capacity for our nervous system to adapt, persists across the lifespan. We don't have evidence that it ever goes away. We do know that it slows with time, but we know that it's never abolished, even in the context of different neurologic disorders and conditions. And the other key point, number two, is that there isn't actually an effective plasticity drug, so to speak, available. It requires effort and hard work to induce plasticity driven by experience. So what do I mean by experience? So over the course of decades, I can remember when I was a student in the university back, well, a while ago, early 2000s, that this idea of neuroplasticity, that the nervous system wasn't fixed, was a relatively new concept. And in the intervening decades, a lot of work has advanced this understanding that if individuals engage in different forms of training and different forms of learning, that their brain changes, not only how it functions, but even the actual structure of the brain can change. And in the lab that I did my research training, one of the first groups to actually show that this ability to change, this ability to respond to training experience can occur in people who've experienced something like a stroke, and even into the stage of long after the initial recovery process has occurred. This was really new evidence to show that even in the context of stroke, that people could change their ability to learn and improve with training. So how do we drive neuroplasticity? So these are what we call the principles of experience-dependent plasticity. So these are the types of things that we leverage. I'm also a physical therapist by background and clinical training. So when we're working with patients in the clinical setting, we try to leverage as many of these principles as we can. And they're meant to be catchy here, and many of them may sound quite familiar to you because they are really fundamental. And we're just trying to put a little bit more of a framework around those so we can understand how we can take these principles and exploit them into helping drive plasticity that improves or maintains function. And the one, as you can see here, that I wanted to highlight is number 8, age matters, is that this phenomena for neuroplasticity does occur more readily in younger adults. But again, we're really fascinated with how we can drive really meaningful and useful plasticity as the brain ages. And the other thing that I think is really important for you all to take away, and this is a slide that I'm starting to put in almost all of my talks, especially when I'm talking about aging, is that the idea of aging is not a universal phenomenon in terms of how it affects each individual. We will all age, we will all experience the effects of aging, but how those affect the nervous system and how they affect the function of the nervous system, in this case, in cognitive function, your ability to think, is different for different people. And we now are gaining a lot of greater understanding of what are the features of these individuals who experience different trajectories of change in cognitive function across the lifespan. And so we're really kind of obsessed with understanding what those features are. We know several of them, and they're probably not surprising to you. Things like exercise, which I'm really happy that we started this session with some movement-based activity. That seems to be the number one feature in these individuals in purple who seem to maintain their cognitive function over time. They were more readily reporting daily exercise and activity. Now, this doesn't mean that they were doing high intensity activities, but they have somehow figured out in their lives how to incorporate movement into their daily routines. So that's one of the sort of other key principles I'd like you to take away from today in terms of how we can maybe drive neuroplasticity to maintain function, in this case, cognitive function. So with that, I want to just pause and give you a break from me and transition into now what we're actually studying in the lab and trying to understand aging effects on our ability to navigate familiar and unfamiliar spaces, and how that may provide us some understanding of how aging affects cognitive function as a potential early indicator of future cognitive decline, that we may be able to intervene with some of these principles of neuroplasticity to mitigate, to slow down this cognitive decline early on before it becomes a major issue for individuals. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Yasmine. This is actually her primary work. So she is the real expert on this. So I'm going to let the expert talk, and I'll come back at the end to share a little bit more about some of the other things that are happening in the lab, and then open it up for questions. So Yasmine, do you want to take it away, and I will do some slides advancing for you?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dr. Borich. All right. Thanks for introducing the wonderful array of things going on in the lab and the reasons we're interested in neuroplasticity. Just a reminder, again, neuroplasticity, the ability to change, or the ability of your brain to change with experience or over your lifetime. And so there are lots of different ways you can look at neuroplasticity, or again, the ability to adapt and change. But I specifically in this project look at aging. So first of all, why the aging process? Well, aging, as Dr. Borch said, is a universal phenomenon that we all experience. We all experience differently, but it is associated with aging-related cognitive decline, or decline in functions of daily living. And this can really impact us all, because with those activities of daily living being impacted, our daily life is impacted, and our autonomy is impacted. And this is an actually increasing global issue, not just a local issue, as we see the global age and life expectancy rising at unprecedented rates. And so through aging, we specifically are studying one specific part of the aging process through a behavior that we refer to as spatial navigation. So you can think of this as getting from point A to point B. Navigation is understanding your daily environments and the environment around you and how you're getting from one place to the other. And actually, it's been shown that deficits in spatial navigation may be one of the earliest indicators of cognitive decline associated with age. So this means perhaps, with aging, we may see that we forget where we place objects, or we forget people's names, but actually earlier than all of these behaviors, we see that getting from point A to point B, getting lost, is often impaired with aging. And this may be one of the earliest indicators of aging. So if this is an early indicator, can we study it to perhaps prevent or predict cognitive decline and future neurodegenerative disorders? So in the lab, we want to study spatial navigation. So how do we do that? We use a few different methods, but as you can see here on the left, the city-like environment that you see, this is a city-like environment that we've created in virtual reality. So basically, you're able to use head-mounted goggles, or goggles that you place over your eyes, to see a city in a virtual world. And we ask people to navigate through the city and to find different target buildings. Essentially, we're asking people to navigate through the city and to understand the space, and to really find different locations and understand how they relate to each other. And so through this, we're able to understand a little bit about the spatial navigation of that person. We also look at an array of other cognitive domains. So here you see this overlapping kind of Venn diagram between balance and other aspects of cognition. Since navigation is not the only thing that's impacted with aging, we're also interested in balance ability, as increased fall risk is very associated with aging as well. Other aspects of cognition, for example, attention, or what we call dual tasking, which means doing two things at once. So we study a lot of these different aspects of cognition and spatial navigation, and we actually see that older adults demonstrate reduced performance across these domains independently, but also in relation to each other. So these aging-related changes in cognition are multifactorial, which means that they're multidimensional. They have many different parts to them. And we can look at navigation, but it's important to know that these also may be related to other things and may actually be predictive of other things as well. So with this task that we established, again, this city-like environment, what's interesting is we did see aging effects related to this environment. For example, we see that older adults and younger adults are different in how they navigate through the environment. But what's encouraging and exciting to me, at least, and I know to Dr. Borich as well, is that the rate of learning, or the rate of improvement after you do the city again and again and again, is very similar between the groups. So what you can see here is if you look at the graph, you can see that the pink or red in the is the younger adult group, and the blue group is the older adult group. You can see that they look different. They are shifted from each other, but they increase at the same rate, or they have the same slope, meaning that essentially everyone across age learns environments the same or similarly, even though perhaps the groups start out at different places. What's really also exciting is that older adults, the blue group here, oh, sorry, yes, perfect. Older adults end up where younger adults started out at on average, which means that with training and with rehabilitation, that all of us can basically achieve the same performance. And so this is really encouraging for us because this one gives us reason to believe in neurorehabilitation with aging, that we can in fact train ourselves to have very similar performance to other people. And two, that we all learn environments similarly. So it's not necessarily about the learning of the environment, it may be something else. So, and another encouraging thing as well is this plot over here, which is another part, I won't dive into it today, but another part of navigation ability that we look at. And we can see that not all older adults are the same. So we can see the younger adults on the left-hand side, the older adults on the right-hand side, but we see this pretty obvious split in two groups where you have half of the older adults pretty much the same or very similar to younger adults, and half of the older adults are distinctly different, which basically means that, again, not all aging is the same. As Dr. Borich showed at one of the earlier slides with the slopes of different aging paths, that people can look a variety of ways with aging. And what we're really interested in the lab is understanding how people end up similar to other age groups or different, and how we can potentially predict that and maybe intervene earlier to provide rehabilitation to bring people closer together in performance. So again, this is very exciting to me because this shows that there are distinct groups in aging, and we may be able to say, oh, for this specific group, we will give this rehabilitative treatment, and for this other group, we'll give another one, and tailor things much more to people's performance, and spatial navigation being particularly of importance because of this early marker. So that's particularly exciting for me. Awesome. So this is all basically done through the aging and navigation study. Well, so far we've looked at navigation behavior, which is exciting, what we've shown you so far, the city, how people perform on the city, how we can characterize people and their different behavioral patterns. But we're also looking forward, recruiting people in our current research study, which is what I'll talk about briefly, to understand how that relates to brain activity. So sure, we can see how people perform differently, but how is that related to brain health? And how can we understand that further to provide better rehab treatments? And so the Aging and Navigation Research Study is basically part 2 of this project, where we want to understand brain activity during navigation to understand, again, how to predict, prevent, and treat cognitive decline. So as Dr. Borich introduced me earlier, I am the project coordinator for this project, so all and any questions can be directed to me or Dr. Borich, of course. We do this, the Aging and Navigation Research Study, if you're interested, we're currently recruiting. It's a 1 study visit approximately for 4 hours at the Emory Rehab Hospital. I'll quickly describe it in case anyone's interested. It consists of basically a few surveys and questionnaires to understand lifestyle, demographics, navigational preferences. It moves on to some computer tasks, which are simple tasks on a computer or a joystick to understand cognition or how you think. A virtual reality task, which is actually the task that I showed you earlier. This is the city task. You wear goggles over your head and you're able to see the virtual environment. And lastly, an MRI scan. If anyone's interested, it's without contrast. It's an MRI scan where it's mostly, again, just pictures of your brain. And then as you lay there and complete a short navigation task as well. So that's our aging and navigation study. The ages that may participate, just because I see this question, are at or above the age of 60. We also have some, oh, that's perfect. Actually, yeah, that's on the slide. So yes, we're recruiting. So if you're interested, a few major eligibility criteria are age 60 or above, right-handed or right-hand dominant, and that's due to the nature of the navigation task. And there are a few additional eligibility criteria for the behavioral task and for MRI. That's just pretty standard for those procedures, and we can run you through them on an individual basis. So again, you can participate to contribute to this knowledge and understanding of healthy aging, help us develop rehabilitative therapies to help our community be healthier, and also, of course, be compensated for your time and assistance and commitment. And of course, we can just answering that one comment in the chat, take questions after this as well. I know Dr. Borich and I like to prioritize question taking, of course.
Great, thank you, Yasmine. That was great, and I'm particularly excited by the results showing this capacity for older adults to improve on this navigation task and demonstrate similar levels of performance to the younger counterparts. We often think of this as a so-called turning back the clock, and that's what our maybe vision is that our dream is that we can do that for everyone, is that we can turn back the clock on how the brain helps control movement, but also how it contributes to cognitive function. So I just wanted to wrap up really quickly to let you know a little bit more about what's happening in our lab, in the Neuro Plasticity Research Lab, the NPRL. We have a couple different projects going on. One is in conjunction, is understanding how the brain controls balance. So this is another motor task that's very important. Yasmine mentioned it earlier about falls and falls risk, and identifying targets. You can see here this individual was doing a tightly controlled lab-based balance task. We've extended this into more clinically feasible balance behaviors and being able to measure how the brain acts during these different tasks to identify differences in people as they age or in the context of neurologic disorders. We also investigate how people learn or relearn motor skills. Here's a good example of a simple coordination task where they're responding to key presses. And we study this and measure brain activity while they're doing this task. And then we also do it in these particular motor learning and motor control tasks in people who are not what we would call neurotypical, those who have neurologic conditions, in particular stroke and Parkinson's disease, to measure how these different disease processes affect one's not only their ability to perform a task, but their ability to learn or relearn those particular tasks. And last but not least, we're also in the process in collaborations with colleagues at Georgia Tech across the city in developing technologies that are able to actually measure body sensation that's needed for movement to help identify early cases of changes due to things like peripheral neuropathy. So we're really interested in understanding the sensory side of how people move, not just the motor side as well. So with that, I will close so we have plenty of time for questions, and just this is ways to get in touch with us in terms of if you want to learn more and you don't have the chance to ask questions today, or you think of a question after the session concludes today, please feel free to reach out to us at any time, whether it doesn't have to be just because you are interested in participating in a study, but if you just have a question related to neuroplasticity, learning, rehabilitation, any of those types of things, we'd be really happy to answer those. And if we don't know the answer, we know a lot of people, as you saw on the slides, who we can direct you to. So with that, I will just say thank you for your attention, and happy to open it up for any questions. And thanks again for the invitation to the organizers. I really appreciate this.
Okay, so you've got a lot of anxious and excited people interested in participating. And I'm going to read from the Q&A. Mr. Sims says, I have a pacemaker, a defibrillator, and can't do an MRI. Does this mean I can't participate in your study?
I can answer that. So our study has both an MRI portion and a behavior portion. And so even though some individuals might not be able to do the MRI, we're still able to, if they would like, they can still contribute to the behavioral portion as long as they meet those eligibility criteria. So I'm happy to discuss offline if you're interested in the behavior only portion.
Well, you said eligibility criteria. Can you tell us what would make it not possible for us to be in this study? What would keep me from being in this study?
For sure. And so this study specifically, it looks at the process of aging. So like what we call healthy aging or neurotypical aging. So unfortunately, at this point, we're not able to recruit anyone with early Alzheimer's disease or mild cognitive impairment. So that's one. A few other eligibility criteria items include no major neurological disorders. So these may include disorders like schizophrenia or epilepsy, and no major neurological events, which may include stroke or recent traumatic brain injury. A few other eligibility criteria may also include no motor impairment, and that is just because due to the nature of the relationship between navigation and balance and motor ability. Those are some of the main ones that I can think of. There's also, for the MRI portion, there are MRI eligibility criteria that are very similar to any other MRI that you would take. And for the virtual reality portion, we just ask that participants are willing and able to put the virtual reality headset over their eyes with no major visual impairments. So this isn't necessarily contact lenses, but more so for glaucoma or cataracts or other major visual impairments.
This is so with what you're doing, and Ms. Dodge asks a really good question here. Thank you for sharing the results of your study. Can you track whether or not through your studies, whether or not somebody has a lot of amyloid or tau accumulation? So does having a lot of amyloid and tau, which is the pathology that's associated with Alzheimer's, mean that you're not learning things, that you have less neuroplasticity?
Yeah, I can take that one. Great. That is, I agree, a great question. So the studies that we undertake, including the brain imaging studies, are not sensitive to those markers. So we are not able to tell directly if there are changes in amyloid or tau deposits. But what we think, or what our goal is that there's been other work to show that these accumulations may be associated with increased cognitive dysfunction. So we are thinking about navigation performance as perhaps a indirect behavioral indicator of changes in the brain that we may not be able to measure and may not be able to conduct in a routine sort of clinical setting like at your primary care provider. But one of our main goals in this work eventually, and sooner hopefully than later, is to try to develop sensitive assessments that can be done in a clinical space, or, and I saw this in the chat, or even remotely via a computer. So the ability to assess navigation performance without even having to have a clinical visit or participate in a research study. So these are active areas that we're interested in developing what we would consider so-called open source or publicly available tasks that people can do and get a estimate of sort of their navigation age, so to speak. Yasmine, do you have anything to add to that?
No.
That's a really great question.
These people are the audience that we have is fairly sophisticated. They come in all the time, and I think they deliberately look up hard questions so that they can make it stump y'all. Is the study only for 4 hours and done completely in like one day, or do you have to have multiple study visits?
This study is just one session in one day, and it's a total of 4 hours. So
do we get paid for participating?
It's $50 compensation to compensate for time.
Okay, so you get $50 people for 4 hours of your time. How
And
quickly can you get us in?
And I will add on is that we are able, there are, 2 parts of the study that if necessary, we can break up into 2 visits, but we found that for people, it seems to be more feasible to come in a single visit. So we try to accommodate that, but we are flexible.
That's true.
And these studies are taking place where?
At the Emory Rehab Hospital on Emory University's campus. And
right on Clifton Road, next to where the Children's Hospital used to be.
Yes, and if you drive to the visit, we are able to take care of parking. So there's a valet service at the front of the building, which you can use and be reimbursed for, which we cover by the lab for the study.
Okay, Lucy Bulligan, I like you. She puts her email address, her telephone number, and where she's from. So she wants to be in the study. Perfect. There are about 4 or 5 people who said, we want to be there, and they put their names on here. I have a question here from an attendee. Does whether or not you're left or right-handed mean anything? Is there any significance to that?
That's go ahead.
I'll take it because I particularly I don't like this question. I think it's something very intriguing and interesting, is that one of the reasons, not only why we are not able to enroll individuals who are left-handed at this stage, is that not only do we have the controls are meant for right-handed individuals, but that's one piece, but an even more scientific piece is that, yes, actually, people who are left-handed tend to have a different organization of their brain. They tend to have more functional activity in both hemispheres rather than on just one hemisphere versus the other based on the task. And so this, when we try to have, especially smaller studies as we're getting going, to have both right and left-handed individuals makes it difficult to know if the differences we see are related to the fact that inherently people with who are left-handed have a different organization of the brain, or it is actually something related to the aging process. So that is the main scientific reason, especially for this brain activity study, where we're trying to understand what are the underlying brain activity patterns that are related to higher and lower navigation performance.
The left-handed people are smarter.
That is actually the conclusion most of the times. In fact, I spend a lot of my time trying to use my left hand. I try to practice what I preach in terms of neuroplasticity. And so, yes, having the ability to be left hand dominant or be able to function with both hands.
Ambidextrous?
Ambidextrous, yes.
Well, I guess I'm among the people who are challenged because I'm strictly right-handed, but okay, I love this. I like this. For the lefties of the world, rejoice. Okay, there's a whole lot of stuff going on, some really interesting things. So Miss Hollis, you write with your left hand only, everything else is right hand, so she's going to be able to participate, right?
Yeah. So yeah, so we give a sort of a questionnaire that we can administer. And so, yes, please follow up with us so we can determine whether or not this is the right study to participate in.
Okay, just for to remind people, for the people who aren't reading the chat, if you're interested in the study, please call Dr. Bassil, 678-823-3999. 678-823-3999. Because some of you are being gracious enough to put your emails in here, but call her, but they've got your number. I know they're writing this down.
I was hoping
think
you're going to
you
send
are.
us the chat after. I'm too busy
I
thinking
also-
about these great questions. So
Let's see. There was something, an MRI that allowed me to read a book. Do you want them to read a book in the MRI?
No, so this MRI, I can explain, yes. This MRI basically is, for most of the task, you can lay down and we'll just be taking pictures of your brain. You can either close your eyes and lay still or watch a nature movie that we have on. For a small portion of the scan, we will ask you to look at a plus sign on the screen, and that's just so that you have your eyes open, you're looking at a plus sign, and that's to understand your brain at rest. And then we also have a short portion of the scan where you complete a short navigation task. So this is a very simple, navigation or cognition task that we administer. So those are what we have you do in the scanner. And I also saw a question about if they did an MRI before in another study, would that be able to apply to this study? So unfortunately, there are lots of different studies going on, including MRI, and our dream is to be able to synchronize everything and use them across different studies. But just the way studies work, different studies have different protocols and different ways that they use the scanner. And so we're usually unable to use those across studies as of now. And so you would need an MRI specifically for our study, also because the task that you do in our study is a little bit different than what's
Okay,
usually.
so part of what you're saying, so there are MRIs that just take a picture, a static picture. And the type of picture that you're doing is one, I'm going to say it's a functional MRI, right? So you're measuring activity. So when people get an MRI picture of the brain for an evaluation for dementia, they want you to stay still and they're not doing anything except trying to figure out what the anatomy is. In Dr. Borich and Dr. Bassil's study, they're looking at what kind of activity is going on in the brain. So it's a little different kind of MRI. They're not taking a single picture, a non-moving picture. They're looking for something dynamic, something that's moving. That's why they're having you do different things in the MRI.
Yeah, the experience is largely the same because we do still take a few static pictures. So the experience is very similar. If you've ever done another MRI, you'll just lay there and we'll take some pictures. But yes, the added piece of the task is because we're interested in the activity of the brain, for sure.
Does that mean you're going to give them some kind of contrast?
No contrast.
So we're just going to lay there like doorknobs.
Yeah.
Basically, yes. So that, yes, and that's the idea here is you can think of the functional part as taking pictures over time. So we're measuring how the brain activity changes while you are performing this navigation task while laying there. So that's
Okay.
the only difference.
Okay. Well, let's
Nothing invasive. We have no studies that do anything invasive. That is all of our approaches, whether it's measuring brain activity in an MRI or in our lab through other technologies like electroencephalography or EEG, they are all non-invasive.
And so Miss Wright is from Florida. She said, are any of these studies done in Florida through Emory Connections? Do you have a colleague in Florida doing this study?
Not yet, but we would love to. And that was one of the other questions I saw fly through the active chat. And one of our, like I said, our goals is to try to increase the sort of the access to these types of tests as we gain more understanding and knowledge when they're ready to be able to extend this work outside of sort of traditional in-person lab visits and something more like a telehealth type platform. So
do you have any other studies? You guys are such good eggs. You know, they're actually interested in you. So I'm like, listen to you. And they also want to know if you have free transportation. Do you have free transportation? Can you help us with transportation or help us arrange a ride to the lab?
Yes, typically we can do that. Yes, so we have a transportation service that we cover through our funding, and so that is something that we can offer. The only challenge is it depends sort of on the distance. So unfortunately, we don't have transportation for those coming from, say, Florida, for example, or out into more rural Georgia. But I think our sort of goal is to try to accommodate as many situations as possible to reduce the burden for participating in these studies, and that at least the majority of the burden is put on us as the researchers, and as little as possible on those who are gracious enough to participate.
Okay, so you're going to pay us. You're going to pick us up. You're not going to feed us and wine and dine us?
That I don't, well, I shouldn't say disparagingly. Our cafeteria has sometimes quite good food, but not always. So I wouldn't want to commit to that. But we do have snacks. So we do offer snacks because these sessions can be a little long. So we do offer snacks and drinks while you are here.
Okay, all right. So Emily and Crystal and Marissa are putting all kinds of information if you're interested in the study, putting in the links, and we've also got the telephone numbers. I'll repeat it again, 678-823-3999. That sounds like something for a Amazon Prime sale, $9.99. It's Amazon Prime Day, isn't it?
Yeah, this is a good deal.
Yeah, that sounds like a good deal. Okay. Helen Price. Okay, I can participate. I have claustrophobia, but I can participate.
Right. Yeah, and the only thing I will say is if you've been in an MRI before and you were able to complete that, those sometimes for maybe a clinical reason, those MRIs are slightly different in their shape. So that's one thing that we would assess, and we even have a so-called fake MRI scanner that you can lay in to see how it feels, that mimics the one that we would be using. So then you wouldn't have to go through it if you didn't feel comfortable, but we do have that ability to test it in advance.
Okay, well, you're being awfully accommodating. I'm actually tempted to do that myself. I saw something that looked like microbes or something that looked like a horror picture film. Are you attaching things to our head? In one of the pictures, you had something black.
Yeah, so I was wondering where that was going. Yeah, so that was likely the picture is showing. There's two, and that might be these sensors. They're actually similar. They're kind of the same kind of sensors that we have in our phones. So if you have a phone that's ever vibrated, it's basically the same technology, just a little bit fancier, and that we can actually put those types of sensors, again, non-invasively on the skin, and it will actually vibrate or press into the skin to be able to test if you can feel the sensation or not. And we use this in different parts of the body to be able to not only measure sensation, but also to provide additional sensory information for people who may be impaired in their ability to feel in their skin. So that's led by a colleague of mine. If you are interested in that, I'm happy to connect you. And they are doing lots of additional studies over at Georgia Tech looking at that. And we've just recently started working together to try to develop better tests of this so-called body sensation, because we actually don't have very good ones right now in a clinical setting. And this is something that's really, we think, quite important and maybe overlooked in trying to diagnose people's challenges with moving, and maybe even to some extent with their challenges in thinking.
Well, we're coming up on 4 minutes or 5 minutes to the end, and I want to thank you, Dr. Bassil and Dr. Borich, for joining us on BrainTalk Live. This is summer, so our traffic's a little lighter than it normally is, but it looks like we've got some very good interest and a lot of people very interested in what you're doing. Thank you again for taking the time to be on our BrainTalk Live. Thank you for showing up at our research social. We're really, really excited to be able to share your research, and thank you for sharing your information with us. This time, I'm going to turn things back over to Emily.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Emily
We are
Bush.
enjoying, oh yeah, we are enjoying a really wonderful conversation about being elastic in the brain here, and we are very happy to have been discussing how things are different generationally between us. And so I kind of had a little question about that. Do you see the trends across generations in terms of the way people approach things? It affects elasticity as well?
Yasmine, this is often a question we get, especially when it comes to navigation and how we have become sort of GPS dominant and not bringing out the maps in the car anymore. And we do think that there's not a lot of good evidence yet on how those types of differences in technology making our lives easier, whether or not that's actually making our brains less plastic and that they don't change as much. We think it's probably more that they are changing in a different way, and that's maybe okay. And that understanding how to interface and interact with technology successfully is its own experience and its own way of plasticity induction. And so even though it's, it's navigating a different way, it's still navigating. And I think that that's where we see perhaps a little generational difference, but we are pretty confident that these differences that we see between younger and older adults are not because of facility with technology. We don't think it's related to how they can move in the virtual space, those sorts of things. It seems to be something more fundamental than that and not related specific to the task.